Hi, my name is Rick Adams from practicalcsm.com, and welcome to part 3, the final part in a 3-part podcast discussion series with my friend Remco de Vries, Head of Marketing at Insided. Our conversation is titled The Customer Success Profession in 2021, Remco's Predictions, and parts 1 and 2 have already been published. So if you've not already viewed or listened to them, then I recommend you do that first and then come back to this final part afterwards. So now here is part 3 for your elucidation and enjoyment.
That doesn't exist either. So I feel like there's a massive gap in sort of the customer success tech stack that is yet to be filled. And I'm really hoping that 2021 will be the year where we actually move beyond what we already have right now and start seeing more of those tools emerge.
Well, that's very interesting. I think, with any emerging profession, like the customer success profession is still, still immature, it still is emerging, has not yet really, matured. I think inevitably we're going to see the Wild West, where there are perhaps lots of small software companies, startups, complete startups, like bedroom startups, seed fund startups, angel investor startups, and then even moving, to more serious Series A, Series B, even, but still small compared to the, the Oracles and the SAPs of the software world. Yeah. And we've looked at our first. It's interesting, the timing, because obviously Gainsight, announced just a few weeks ago, $1 billion investment. That's $1,000 million, coming into them, and that's way bigger than anything that's even slightly touched customer success up till now. That's huge. Arguably, even so, here it becomes like a Jupiter in the planetary system of customer success. If that analogy makes any sense whatsoever, almost too big. Or more like the sun, maybe. So, we've got to be careful about that, I think. But also, I do think that there's going to be a massive shakeout at some stage. And I honestly, I'm not expert enough on the software side to know. It's not my area of expertise. But I would suggest that there is inevitably going to be winners and losers. There is inevitably going to be a shakeout of also rans whose software, for one reason or another, didn't get adopted as much. Maybe it just didn't have enough investment, or it didn't just, the marketing wasn't right, or whatever it is. Maybe the tool just wasn't right, the idea wasn't right, but it's an also ran, and I think that is inevitably going to happen. But I think you're going beyond that. You're saying, well, yes, that, but also it's not just a shakeout of get rid of the weaker ones, and we end up, instead of having, as we got now, the Wild West of like 20 or 30 that you couldn't name them all. We're going to have a half a dozen solid ones that everybody knows and knows the differences between, incidentally, as well. I think that, but you're going beyond that. You're saying yes, but actually there's a gap that nobody is filling at the moment. And at the moment it's a cross, but it's a hybrid. It's half like a CRM tool, store stuff about your customer, and it's half a customer success health score tool, which is send me an alarm bell if there's something wrong with my relationship with my customer. Right. And that's it at the moment. And you're saying, well, yes, but that's not what customer success is.
No, I think that, and I think also it's just it can be done a lot simpler, right? So it's not we can surely adapt existing tooling to do something that we want, and maybe or partly do it, at least in some cases. But I'm really rooting for the 20, 30, 40, maybe 50 new companies coming in next year that have a clear customer success philosophy in mind when they started, and have been developing with that philosophy in mind ever since. Because that's really gonna propel all of the software that we're using in customer success right now into a new direction, with new use cases and new ways of getting there, and just new ways of supporting CSMs and their customers.
Well, I think it's very interesting. It's quite an exciting concept. I love the way you've expressed it. From our perspective at practicalcsm.com, obviously, as you know, Remco, we have we have a framework for customer success called the Practical CSM Framework, and that's really what everything's based on. And part of my ambition initially, even before writing the training course, was software around best practice delivery of customer success that was like step by step help the customer success manager and the customer together, as you say, the same tool, but that would be like step-by-step process around customer success management best practice. So any investors out there with $20 million or something like that, speak to Remco. We'll happily take
exactly
develop something in 2020.
Exactly. And I think this also could have very interesting implications for customer success teams themselves, because as we talk about, for example, a maturing space, customer success, I mean, most often I talk to customer success teams that don't even have their own budget for tooling.
Agreed.
While their marketing counterparts probably have, I don't know, hundreds of thousands, sometimes even millions of euros to spend on whatever tooling there is. I think I saw a report not long ago that there's like 80,000 or 85,000 tools purpose built for marketing teams right now. It's insane in SaaS only. So it's completely crazy. I can't name it.
It is crazy.
But CS as a maturing function at some point also just deserves their own budget, their own buying power, being able to make their own decisions there to achieve their own goals.
Well, funny you should say that, Remco, because your prediction number 6, I don't know if you remember what it is.
Yeah.
Right. Customer success confidently takes the seat at the exec table with proper business acumen. Feels to me like this is the moment to introduce this one. Would you agree?
Sure.
Okay. So go ahead and discuss this one, prediction number 6, because I think that this is just continuing your conversation here.
Yeah, so the first time I used the seat at an exact table phrase, I think after my CEO probably gave it to me, it was like a year and a half ago or something. So I do feel like customer success has matured enough that in a lot of companies, the VP of CS is actually in the management team and reporting to the CEO and all those kinds of things. If that's not happened for your company yet, then please make it happen, because it's such an important function. It needs to report into the CEO and take place in all strategic discussions. So that said, I do feel like the role sort of is changing a little bit also from a leadership perspective. So what we also mean by proper business acumen, and putting that into the prediction as well, is that just like you would expect your VP marketing to forecast pipeline, budget, what they're going to do for it, what campaigns they're going to run, what that looks like quarter per quarter, or your VP of product to detail out a roadmap for 2021 every quarter, every sprint with every team that you have in your development team. CS leaders are also going to be expected to do the same. So they're going to need to be able to plan out their business entirely. Obviously, churn and upsell and retention, all of those numbers need to be spread out across all accounts, all quarters, everything, but also the rest of the budget, the team budget, tooling budget, everything basically that has a number and has money and is relevant on a higher level management perspective is going to be expected from VPs of CS as well. So moving beyond just making sure that there's no one churning, basically.
And do you think that this is because of course this can't happen without the agreement of or indeed the direction of the existing senior decision-making team. So do you think that the message is now much clearer with CEOs and CFOs and their like now in December 2020 as we're recording this compared to last December?
Yeah. So I think it's a tiny bit of a contradiction with the next one we're discussing, but I do think so. So this year, especially with all of the issues and all of the customers in trouble and customers requesting discounts and the major impact basically on the bottom line of any business has has at least made CS a lot more important to the leadership that wasn't yet aware of its importance.
I think so too. I think obviously nobody nobody wants COVID-19. It's been devastating for so many people in both personal and professional lives, and I'm very sorry for that. But I would say that one thing that it has done that could arguably be described as positive for the customer success profession as a whole is that it has most definitely raised the awareness of the importance of keeping your existing customers happy, of making sure that you're delivering value to those customers. Because as we all know, when the chips are down, it is far harder to gain a new customer than it is to retain an existing one.
Exactly.
And even if that's not the case, sorry, you go ahead. No,
and I feel like everyone already knew that at some point, or at least in the marketing world, it's a very widely spread message, at least.
Yes.
But I feel like this year has had so many surprises that it's become a blessing and a curse. So one, a lot of leadership that wasn't yet aware of the importance of customer success definitely are aware of the importance right now. Two, it's also a curse because, like I said in the previous prediction around technology, etc., CS teams will be expected to, for example, come up with a proper forecast that is somewhere close to also realization at the end of 21 around churn and upsell and maybe sometimes even adoption, and it also needs to make sense, right? So also the pressure is on a little bit more to leaders.
Well, I think there's a difference, Remco, between knowing something intellectually and knowing it viscerally.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's happened, is that whereas, as you say, I mean, it was known, yes, well, just of course our customers are important to us. Of course we're customer centric. Suddenly, when everything's down and you no longer have the luxury of your new customers, and even your existing customers are saying, well, limited budgets, everything's on hold, etc. That's when you really, really understand the importance of strong customer relationships and customers who know that they cannot do without your product. That's what you want at that stage, right? Is customers who absolutely see that regardless of how difficult the financial situation is, their relationship with you and renewing their contract with you is critical to their business's ongoing success. And that's what we've got to be aiming, right?
Yeah, I think this will be super interesting, because just imagine a world where on a leadership level, people will start asking questions like, oh, this customer is churning, but why? And how many touch points have we had with them in the last year? And basically what was their sentiment throughout all that, even if it's measured just by a CSM? Because
I think that the average customer success manager, and maybe let me be more clear, actually, the average customer success leader has got to get better at representing their team into the senior decision maker team. They've just got to. And I think that some of them are just not, they don't have the voice, and I think that's for various historical reasons. They don't have the power of, say, like the head of sales. So you've got the head of customer success. Every department or function head is going to be beating down the door of the CFO, telling the CFO why they should be investing more in their department or function, right? And sales gets listened to. It just does. And that's where customer success needs to be at. Customer success needs to be an absolute given. Oh, hang on a minute. Customer success has something important to tell us. Let's all just shut up and listen. Right? And we're not always there yet at the moment within, some are, but we're not there yet within all companies, that concept. And to me, here's what it comes down to, is that for many years, for decades, for hundreds of years, the way it has basically worked between the company that provides and the company that purchases is that the company that sells their product or service sells the product or service, hands over the keys, as it were, and waves goodbye and says, thank you for your purchase, good luck. They have fulfilled on their part of the contract, which was to provide the product or to provide the service. They've done their job. Now, obviously, if it breaks, we've got support to help you fix it, because that's our guarantee of, and all the rest of it. But basically, you asked for one of them, and now we've given you one of them. You've given us your money. The deal is done. That is not the new world. The new world is not like that at all. Actually, the new world is we don't sell you a product or a service. We sell you an outcome.
Yeah.
And if we're going to sell you an outcome, then whereas before what we had to do if we sold you a product was we need to provide the product. If we sell you an outcome, funnily enough, we need to provide you with the outcome. And the product on its own is not the outcome. It's the product plus customer success services.
Agreed.
There we go. And that's what needs to be, almost, we need to be evangelizing this concept, I think, to the head senior levels, better than we are currently.
Yeah.
Anything else on number 6 before we move to our 7th and final?
Let's move to number 7 because it's related.
Okay, so here we are then, Remco. We've arrived at your 7th and final prediction, which is customer metrics will be company owned, no longer just owned by CS. So as always, tell us a bit more about what you mean by this, please, as a starting point.
Yeah, so basically as 2020 really put the spotlight on churn and retention, it's sort of, and this has been a given always, but maybe not as clear. So retention doesn't just boil down to the efforts of customer success, basically.
Of course.
So important in there is,
agreed.
For example, product and the product they're building and whether or not it's actually driving value for your customer, or if you're listening to your customer when they're giving feedback on the product or something.
Rubbish products don't get renewed.
Exactly, yeah. So, and then customer success can do an awesome job, but renewal will still not happen.
Right.
So I feel like this past year, many companies have been forced to adjust their strategies in order to meet customer goals, or at least in the very sense focus on retention and churn and make sure that there aren't any more surprises. This sort of meant all hands on deck to help keep an eye on the effects of their deliverables on the customer after that. And I feel like that really has meant now that these formally known customer success metrics will also basically start to influence other departments. So also marketing will need to have a thought on what they can do in making sure that customers are aware of every feature and that they're explained well, and that customers have a way of actually initiating some conversation by themselves. CS obviously,
and that we're not we're not over marketing or overselling, or I say over as in selling something that it isn't.
Yeah.
So we're not making promises we can't keep.
It needs to be super clear so that you don't misjudge or at least cause different kinds of expectations with the customer that are then not really solvable anymore for your customer success team. So I feel like every single team will focus on these customer metrics to prevent a further loss of customers, or at least a stable bottom line financially to the company, which will also loop in the CFO, for example. Yeah, so I think due to 2020 now, 2021, every plan, whether it's made by CS, marketing, or product, will have some sort of form of customer focus, or at least something tying into that in it, and some form of responsibility also over the customer relationship.
I think this is really interesting. So if we look at the implications of this, we talked earlier about the current situation for many organizations or many CS teams is that they can't get hold of data that is not owned by them. We talked about that earlier. Now we're saying it the other way around. We're saying like the data that is currently owned by them actually should be available to everyone.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is we're saying, corporate data is corporate-wide data, regardless of where it is, and let's get rid of all the silos and make sure that we have wherever is necessary, and obviously GPDR or whatever I forget the initials. But thank you. Yeah, we've got to make sure so we're not breaking the law, and we're managing confidentiality and all the rest of it. But within those boundaries, that we are making sure that everyone within the organization who needs the information they need has access to it at the time they have it, and not just have access to it, but has a common view of it so that they can collaborate with, share thoughts with, discuss, and come up with ways of dealing with problems based upon this information.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and I think I'm hoping kind of that this will drive the earlier prediction also a little, because I feel like
Right.
customers that actually don't own a lot of data. So hopefully this will cause the other actual owners of the platform or data or whatever to just open up the gates a little bit more and make it easier for the rest of the company to also be there. And this could also be a cultural thing, right? So this could also lead to a culture of basically openness of, for example, companies creating a Slack channel where every single NPS score comes in from every single customer for everyone to see, so that people can also question why this customer is so super unhappy with feature A or with relationship B. Yeah, I think this is a very natural and good thing for companies to start doing.
Very interesting. Yes. Okay. So, advice for your final prediction, advice for preparing for or dealing with this prediction around data sharing.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a difficult one. I'm not going to say it's easy, because centralizing everything will probably be a difficult task. But yeah, I would at least advise to try and start being a little bit more open with customer data, or at least customer influence data. And for example, like the example I just gave on the Slack channel. Just don't be afraid, or don't think that other departments will have nothing to do with this KPI or can't do anything for this customer in this phase, or because I generally think that's untrue. I think it's super healthy for even a developer or someone else to question.
Oh gosh, yeah, absolutely.
And try and think by themselves what they can still do for the customer to make them happier.
Okay,
Open the
and
floodgate.
I'd like to add to that, if I may, that I think that as I said previously with one of your other predictions, is that I think that if the customer success team show and prove that they get this early on and are excited about it and spearhead it, then they will get better representation when it happens. Absolutely. And they will end up with, you know, a more powerful, better quality position than if they just let things go without their input into it, or with less input into it, where others will then potentially then take control, who do not see the importance of customer success having an input into this. So you know, it's much easier to influence things now at the beginning, is what I'm trying to say, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
So proactiveness, I think, is very important.
Fully agree.
Well, what a journey. Remco, wow. Thank you so much. This has been nothing less than a fantastic insight, I think, into the possible changes that we might see coming over the horizon for the customer success profession in 2021. Now, I must admit, I think you've made some very accurate and meaningful observations, and it'd be very interesting to see exactly what does happen as the year unfolds. Obviously, we'll have you back, and we'll be very critical if you haven't got it right at all, but very praiseful if you have, and I'm sure it's going to be that. And we will insist you come back either way, even if we have to drag you in chains. So
I'll gladly come on and
to the extent that I'm now talking nonsense. We've been talking for a long time. You've been very generous with that time today, so I don't want to impose further on you. But can I just ask if you'd like to leave our viewers or listeners with any final thought about, or maybe wishes for 2021 as we close this session?
No, then just a general one. I'm hoping for it to be generally perceived as a better year than 2020, both in business and in personal. That would be great.
Well, I think that's a great place to leave the podcast on, Remco. I absolutely agree with that sentiment, and would add my own to that. My very best wishes for everybody. If you've had a very difficult year, as we said, people have been impacted by COVID-19, both personally and professionally. If that has been the case for you, my heart goes out to you, as I'm sure Remco's does as well. We wish you and your family the very best. This we're releasing early 2021, so we've had the New Year celebrations by the time you will have been listening or watching this, but would like to wish you a very healthy, prosperous and enjoyable 2021. We all deserve it after this year, I think. So yeah, so Remco, I hope and I'm sure that those who've been listening or viewing have gotten as much out of this as I know I have done. So Remco de Vries, Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so thank you for viewing or listening. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, please do me a favor, if you will, and share the link on social media. Tell everybody about it. And we've got loads more podcast guests, of course, lined up for 2021. And by the way, if you want to come on, let me know. Just drop me an email or connect with me on LinkedIn or whatever and say you want to come on as a guest and explain who you are and what you want to talk about. And we'll see if we can do that. Or indeed, if you've got somebody in mind that you really want me to interview, tell me about that as well. That'd be great. So my name is Rick Adams from practicalcsm.com. As always, saying thank you for listening to this podcast. And I look forward very much to talking to you again in future episodes. Thank you.